Anubis, Seshmu, Meshhat, Hemsut, Tefnut, Heket, Mafdet.
This is Unveiled, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 Egyptian gods and goddesses.
Do you need the big questions answered? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content.
For this list, we're looking at the most well-known, revered gods and goddesses from ancient Egypt. Did we leave any out? Let us know in the comments. Number 20, Taret. It makes sense to kick off our list with a mother figure, Taret, an ancient Egyptian goddess of childbirth and fertility. The Egyptian pantheon includes many deities that feature both animal and human characteristics. Taret is no different, being portrayed with a hippopotamus body, leonine legs, and a crocodile tail. She sometimes holds the hieroglyphic sign Sa, which means protection. Hippos can often be aggressive creatures, which makes Taret the epitome of a fiercely protective fertility goddess and water deity. Her images were also venerated in Nubia in what's now Sudan, as well as ancient Crete and mainland Greece. Number 19, Nephthys. Our next deity is another protective mother goddess, but this time associated with night and darkness. Nephthys is a goddess of childbirth, but also mourning, embalming, and the dead. She's generally portrayed as a human with a headdress and ceremonial staff, but is also known to possess wings on occasion. Nephthys' role as a death goddess also makes her a counterpoint to her sister Isis. While both are involved in funerary rites, Isis is more strongly associated with birth and rebirth. Temple service is also a specialty for Nephthys, as is the brewing of beer for celebrations and festivals. Number 18, Wepwawet. He is the wolf or jackal, a scout and god of war by the name of Wepwawet. While not a major martial deity, Wepwawet, whose name translates to opener of the ways, was said to assist the pharaoh in hunts. As a result, it's good to have Wepwawet at your side during a conflict, as his influence is said to open up attack and escape routes for armies. Wepwawet is often compared with Anubis, thanks to their physical similarities and canine features. But make no mistake, this clever god of war more than stands on his own as a unique member of the Egyptian pantheon. Number 17, Nut. There's a sense of wonder and beauty associated with our next goddess. Her name is Nut, and she's closely associated with the open sky, stars, actually the whole universe. Nut is a creation goddess, an elder deity who's occasionally portrayed as a cow, but more often as a nude, starry woman arched over earth. She also serves as mother to some of Egypt's most well-known gods, including Osiris, Seth, Isis, Nephthys, and, in some versions, Horus. The myth of the sun god Ra's cycle of death and rebirth hinges on the participation of Nut. Simply stated, without Nut, the celestial Egyptian landscape would look a whole lot different. Number 16, Thth. Creation is intrinsic to the story of Thth, a patron god of craftsmen and architects. Thth was a poetic and well-spoken god, responsible for the creation of the ancient Egyptian world, and a father to the high priest known as Imhotep. There are a number of animals that are considered either sacred to Thth or associated with how he's depicted physically. One of them is a bull, specifically the sacred bull known as Apis. Elsewhere, he's occasionally depicted as twin birds with human heads, or as a regal green-skinned man, mummified in the traditional Egyptian manner. Number 15, Sekhmet. There's something of a dichotomy behind the history of our next entry, the sun goddess Sekhmet, as she's often associated with both war and healing.
Oh, who's this?
Sekhmet, named after the Egyptian goddess.
This lion-headed deity leads slain warriors into the afterlife, but she's also a fearsome personality on her own, acting out the fire-breathing vengeance of her father Ra. Indeed, Sekhmet can become so bloodthirsty as an instrument of war that one particular myth saw Ra needing to ease her anger with beer so as not to eliminate all of humanity. As a result, many of her festivals and celebrations saw followers drinking ceremonial wine to excess, as a means of both reminding them of Sekhmet's rage and of quelling it. Number 14, Mahes. Mahes is another god of war, associated with Sekhmet, and also possesses the head of a lion. The son of Thth and either Sekhmet or Bast, Mahes may actually have originated from outside Egypt in Nubia. It's actually not too surprising that we see so many gods and goddesses with feline attributes, as cats were considered sacred in ancient Egypt. While Mahes doesn't share as big name recognition as some of his contemporaries, the cults that worshipped him gave praise to his mastery of the weather and skill with a blade. Number 13. Hoppy. There's an annual holiday in Egypt known as the flooding of the Nile, a natural weather cycle that occurs during monsoon season, yet which possesses origins dating back to ancient times.
But is it possible that the source of Egypt's mighty river Nile could rise in these distant mountains of the outer earth?
The Nile god Hoppy is closely associated with this event, which is said to occur due to Isis's tears for her slain husband, Osiris. At the time, Hoppy's arrival is notable for its connection to fertility, symbolized by the god's androgynous physical appearance, an amalgamation of a pregnant woman and a bearded man. The flood is celebrated as a birth to all things, with Hoppy's visitation signifying rebirth for both Egypt's people and her land. Number 12. Maat or Maat. Justice and balance. These are concepts that appear often in Egyptian mythology, and the goddess Maat embodies these virtues. She is order and harmony, the antithesis of Thth, an Egyptian concept that connotes chaos and wickedness. Her consort is Thth, and they both act as judges of the dead. The deceased's hearts are weighed against the sacred ostrich feather of Maat, and if the evil of their lives is heavier, then they are not allowed passage into paradise.
Throw her into the pool!
It's one of the most iconic and well-documented aspects of Egyptian mythology, which makes Maat a central figure in the pantheon. Number 11. Bastet or Bast. There are few goddesses who embody the sacred nature of cats in ancient Egypt better than Bastet, also known as Bast. While Sekhmet, who was sometimes called the Lady of Slaughter, could be compared to a lion on the hunt, Bastet has a gentler feline nature, even coming to be portrayed as a cat rather than lion goddess.
In those days, we cats were venerated and worshipped because of the cat goddess Bastet. She was the head of the hierarchy of animal gods.
A sleek and beautiful goddess connected with motherhood and childbirth, she was depicted as a woman with the head of a cat. Although she originated as a warrior goddess, she was also a protector, who devotees relied on to guard them from disease or evil spirits.
The ancient Egyptians believed that cats, like Bastet, were the guardians of the underworld. They could have been placed here to protect whomever was buried in here.
Number 10. Sobek. The Nile River is intrinsic to Egyptian identity and culture, an important physical place that's connected deeply to the country's roots. It even has its own patron god in the form of Sobek.
Sobek.
Sobek is a fearsome warrior god depicted as having the head of a crocodile. This is the result of so many ancient Egyptians possessing a fear of the creatures and their dwelling place within the Nile.
Well, that sucks.
Sobek is the divine manifestation of this fear, reverence, and respect. A dangerous god who, at the same time, can be called upon for protection against enemies.
Sobek, grant the power that it may mold this wretched creature, that it may be reborn, that it may serve.
It's a complex cult of personality around one of the Egyptian pantheon's most complex deities. Number 9. Thth.
Wise lord of the sacred word, we seek your counsel.
One must meet Thth if they're to survive the judgment of the dead. Thth is a major god of Egypt, an arbiter who works alongside his wife Maat as a guardian to the underworld, and herald of Ra. His depiction as an ibis-headed man is iconic, as is his stature as a scribe and master of all sciences. The 5 children of Nut are attributed to a myth involving Thth and the creation of the 365-day calendar, and his counsel is vital to Ra as overseer of the gods and men.
I've seen the world, created from sand and water. I contain all the wisdom in the universe.
Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs are also said to have come from Thth, and cultures as far as Greece were aware of him and his importance to the Egyptian people. Number 8. Geb. We've all looked up at the sky in wonder, but perhaps no one has gazed with quite the same intensity as Geb, god of the earth.
When a mortal's heart is weighed in the halls of Maat, Geb sits among the gods in judgment. Those burdened with guilt and regret are claimed by Geb.
The father of snakes, he was sometimes depicted as having a serpentine head. He fell in love with his sister, the sky goddess Nut, and had to be separated from her by Shu, god of the air. This is the reason that the earth, air, and sky are separated. As god of the earth, Geb was responsible for droughts and deserts on one hand, but also fertility on the other. His influence even included earthquakes, which were said to occur when he laughed. Number 7. Set or Seth. The Osiris myth is one of the most important from ancient Egyptian mythology, with some clearly defined heroes and villains. The latter character in the story is Set, also known as Seth.
In 1,000 years of peace, what have you accomplished?
A violent god of storms and disorder who murders his brother Osiris to take the throne of Egypt.
I, Set, shall be your one true king.
However, Isis raises her husband from the dead, allowing them to conceive a son, Horus. Set's father is Geb, and his head is a composite of various animals, including a jackal and a donkey. Set's conflicts with Horus in the Osiris myth can be brutal, but the stories are some of the most fleshed out tales of ancient Egypt. He was also sometimes portrayed in a positive light, protecting Ra on his journey across the sky. Number 6. Horus. This important member of the Egyptian pantheon possesses one of the most striking appearances of all the deities.
By the might of Horus, you will kneel before us.
The god of the sky is portrayed as a man with the head of a falcon, and he's closely associated with the pharaoh's kingship throughout ancient Egypt. The sun and moon are said to be his eyes, and the hieroglyphs depicting these eyes have become some of the most well-known symbols from ancient Egyptian culture.
I did not choose a path of revenge. I chose none of this. You tell me, what kind of power do I really have?
There's a reason why the Eye of Horus shows up so often when we see major Egyptian art exhibits, as it was said to have been a symbol of aristocracy, power, and a means to ward off the influence of evil spirits.
I thought you were the greatest of all the gods. Now look at you. You have nothing.
Number 5. Amun, or Amun-Ra. As king of the gods, Amon had a central role in the Egyptian pantheon, and was even worshipped in some form or another outside of Egypt, such as by the ancient Greeks.
It's not built on the scale of men, it's built on the scale of gods, of one god, Amon-Ra, the god of the sun.
Eventually, some saw the rest of the pantheon as mere extensions of Amun's personality. Think of him as the Zeus of ancient Egypt, although with perhaps a more softened relationship with humanity. This was due to Amun-Ra's reputation as a god who was devoutly worshipped by the poor and unfortunate, as well as sailors who sought calm seas for their journeys. Amun's relationship with Thth and Ra are sometimes seen as roughly analogous to the Christian Holy Trinity of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Number 4. Isis. Isis was yet another Egyptian deity whose reputation and influence were so vast that her worship extended far beyond Egypt's borders.
Greetings, Thth. Did you ever imagine that your former student would one day wear the crown of Egypt?
Greeks and Romans alike recognized Isis as an important figure, a maternal goddess of wisdom, magic, and the afterlife, who was a protector and governess for her people. The influence of Isis is so important, in fact, that she's one of the few Egyptian deities to have persisted into the modern day, with many pagan beliefs referencing Isis as a divine manifestation of the female form. In many ways, Isis is a personification of nature itself.
Isis, the Egyptian symbol of life. I meant it for your father.
Number 3. Ra. The sun god Ra is another pivotal figure in Egyptian mythology, an overseer of heaven, earth, and the underworld.
Hail thou, great god Ra.
Ra was presented in a fashion similar to Horus, as a man-falcon hybrid.
That is the sun god Ra, bringer of light and life. He was revered.
He is the head of a parakeet.
It's a falcon.
Potato, potato.
Traveling the sky on a solar bark, he brought light to the world and was closely associated with creation.
I have work to do.
Often, he was depicted with a solar disk above his head. Pharaohs of Egypt were seen as Ra's emissaries on Earth, physical manifestations of his leadership and guidance.
You shall never feast on my creation. Try as you might.
Although Ra's legend today hasn't continued in the same manner as Isis, he remains a vital figure of the Egyptian pantheon. Number 2, Anubis. Just as there are gods of earth and sky, so too are there gods of the underworld. Enter Anubis, the god of death, cemeteries, mummification, basically everything cool about the Egyptian mythos.
The doors of earth are open to you. You must begin your journey.
We've seen a number of similar-looking animal-human hybrid gods, but Anubis stands out with his strikingly black canine head atop a man's body.
Stay on the path.
He's the lord of the underworld, or at least he was until Osiris took on the role, and he guards the scales that weigh the soul after death. While he doesn't get a lot to do in ancient Egyptian tales, he serves as a fearful and implacable reminder of death and judgment.
I tried my best.
Your best is good.
Number 1, Osiris. Behold the first mummy.
This is what it means to be a god.
This major Egyptian god of fertility, death, rebirth, and agriculture is the basis for Egyptian funerary rituals, thanks primarily to his role in the Osiris myth.
These hieroglyphics describe the legend of Osiris. Tells of a heavenly battle between Osiris and the evil god Seth.
Here, Set kills Osiris and dismembers his body so that he can't be resurrected. The journey of Isis to collect the pieces and wrap them up is linked to the embalming and mummification process, and symbolizes the belief in life after death. As a result, Osiris was also closely associated with farming, worshipped for healthy crops and protection from the elements.
What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from Unveiled, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for our latest content.